Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you have chosen to either listen to this on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime, or you're viewing this on YouTube, Vimeo, or Facebook. Whichever way you're sharing with us, we're grateful for your time and for your attention. And as always, we invite you to comment on how this podcast can better serve you. You can reach out to me at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing and what we can do to make the podcast more meaningful to you. I'm very happy today to welcome a young man who's an entrepreneur here in our city, Mr. Richard Burnett. Mr. Burnett has a somewhat unique feature that he shares with people, and I'm going to let him tell you about it. Mr. Burnett, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us on the Thrive podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me something about yourself. First of all, you're a young man, 31 years old.
Correct.
And I asked before we started recording, are you from Baton Rouge? You said born here, but you were raised in Seattle, Washington. So tell me how that story works, that you went to Seattle and made the decision to come back to Baton Rouge.
Understood. Of course, yes, from born in Baton Rouge and raised in Seattle. Of course, at my early ages, it wasn't my decision. Of course, born out here and then moving to Seattle at an early age of probably like 3-4 years old. Being raised out there, and then, probably like 10 to like 11 years later coming back down to Louisiana. So I've always been back and forth between Seattle and Baton Rouge. And, I just decided to come back because, there's nothing like the Southern hospitality. There's nothing like the people here. There's nothing like the food here. Seattle is great, and, it's a city that I will always have love for, but, there's nothing like the South.
One of the things I find interesting about that is I've been doing these podcasts now for several years, and when I have a guest on, usually I end by asking a question about whether or not you want your children to be raised here in Baton Rouge. But I find it interesting that you were away from Baton Rouge and you made the decision to come back. What is it that attracted you? I hear about the food and things like that. But from a business perspective, was Baton Rouge attractive to you in that way also?
So it has its pros and cons. Because just off the top of my head, I was like, Seattle does have a lot of different opportunities coming from every which way. When it comes down to like bigger companies like Microsoft, Meta, etc. Like having opportunities with them is great. But when it comes down to like I said, like the Southern hospitality and the people, like I grew my first business here. So I wanted to be here and cultivate that. So when it comes down to it, it's like, here is, where I built, so I wanted to continue, and build legacy here too.
What was your first business, if you don't mind my asking?
My first business was our Burnett brand, which is a luxury watch company, so that happened in
So it's what we're talking about now, the watches. Okay.
Correct.
How did you come up with the concept of wooden watches as opposed to the traditional metal watches?
I always loved telling this story because I wasn't a big watch fanatic as a kid. So the idea of my brand came first. I always wanted to, have a brand because I was infatuated with brands like Michael Kors or Ralph Lauren. But I was always conflicted because when I looked up their stories, I was like, okay, who are they? And, it's always a disconnect between, me looking in the mirror and the people that I'm supporting. So when it came down to like that, it's like it was always a conviction because like I love those brands. I love the material. I love how they brand themselves. I love how they market themselves. I mean, and market their companies. So I always had that infatuation of wanting to create a brand. So I've always had the idea of creating my own brand. And so the idea of my brand came first, and then watches came second. And watches was the perfect product to, dive in and, put
So
my
how'd you choose wood as opposed to metal?
Wood I chose that mainly because the watch industry is very saturated. There's so many different watch brands. There's so many different variations of watches or, watches where they, just basically, just have the same type of watch, but they just, put a different branding and marketing strategy behind it. Wood kind of narrows it down. It makes it a little bit more unique and sustainable.
Help me to understand what it is, because you're right, there are several different watch brands out there. I'm not a watch connoisseur, so talk to me like, how is it Denzel said, like I'm a 5-year-old. Help me to understand what it is I should be looking for in a quality watch. The watch I wear, it's a Michael Kors watch, but it's because someone gave it to me. I didn't even know who Michael Kors was.
Understood.
And when I opened up the watch, I wasn't overly impressed by it at the time. Somebody had to tell me that it's a pretty good, that it's a pretty good watch. So help me to understand what it is that I should be looking for in a quality timepiece.
So the first thing is, the aesthetics of the watch. Making sure that that's there, that you love that, or like whoever is looking at that watch. Of course, the aesthetics means everything. But more importantly, like the inside of the watch, the mechanism, whether it's like a quartz movement, which is like a battery operated movement that, ticks, or like it's an automatic or mechanical movement that has like a sweeping motion. And so like those are like the main things that I look for within watches. Like, of course, aesthetics, the material used, whether it's stainless steel, or if it's, alloy, whatever is used for a different type of watches. But the movement is what makes the difference. Like the inside of a watch, like I said, the automatic, mechanical, or the digital, or either the battery operated watches. So that's what's going to make, the difference between like a $200 watch or $2,000 watch, or, even, $1 million watch.
$1 million for a watch.
Yeah, I mean, it gets there. I'm not there, and I don't plan to do that, but it gets up there.
The internal mechanisms, I hear talk about, well, from my childhood, I remember them talking about jewels in watches. I'm sure that they don't mean jewels in the traditional sense of diamonds and rubies and pearls. Exactly what is a jewel, and how does that work in the watch?
So those jewels, in an automatic movement, it helps the mechanism turn, because there's no, like with automatic movement, there's no physical battery. So it's kind of like a engine without a battery. Like, of course, if you turn that engine manually, it's gonna propel itself. But without that battery, it's not gonna start. So how I kind of like put it in like simpler terms is like those jewels is what is going to make it move, because you got to actually like use your perpetual movement and just like and whatnot.
So as I move my hand, the jewels inside the watch keep okay,
and it's propelling itself. I wish I had one of those with me so I can show you exactly how it works in real time. But those jewels help that watch propel itself without a battery or any type of like circuitry.
So if a watch loses time, is that because I have not moved my arm enough, or
that is correct? Because if you set that watch down, most of the automatic watches that I have, they have like a power reserve of probably like 6 to 8 hours or so. So like if overnight, if you don't put it on a watch winder, or you wake up in the morning, that watch, it stops because there's no movement to it. So in the morning, you have to set it, self-wind it a little bit, And then, of course, as you're moving your arm and walking and going about your day, that's what's going to keep it moving throughout the day, and it's going to keep time. But as soon as you put it down, then that's when it's like, okay, cool. Like, it has a little bit of power reserve, but then it's going to stop if you don't wear it for like a few days.
Okay. So, as an entrepreneur, as an African-American entrepreneur in the Deep South, in the conservative Deep South, have you had difficulty, or how would you describe your experience in raising adequate funds in order to make your business work?
So it's definitely been a struggle because started in 2019. I wasn't in the best financial position.
25 years old, by the way.
Yeah,
when you started at 25. Okay.
I didn't know much about anything when it comes down to. I didn't even know what a profit and loss statement was when I started.
Okay.
Granted, I wish I would have. But there's a lot of things that I didn't know. I just had the passion to start. And I had the passion in the marketing and like all of those creative ideas, all that great stuff, and I executed all those things. But I forgot about the financial side of it. I didn't know anything about credit at the time. I didn't know anything about like how to get funds or anything of that nature. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I just want to sell a product. So,
but you didn't want to work for somebody else.
Understood.
Because you started your own company.
Correct.
You chose to go out on your own, which is a very risky and very brave, courageous thing to do. When you went to lending institutions, I'm assuming you went to banks, or do you have private lenders or private financiers? How exactly did you get the funding?
So the funding was more so like, it was from my job at the time. And then, I had friends that would, private lending, of course, is like just them helping out at the time. But as far as like actual, like going to a bank, I've never done that with my business.
Really?
And I think the only capital that I used was through my website platform. Every now and then they'll, send me a little form and say like, hey, you qualify for X amount. But as far as like big name banks and getting funding and whatnot, that's something that I always strayed away from. And also, and not only just because I didn't want to do it, it's because, the knowledge of credit wasn't there to the point where like I didn't want to take, I don't know, X amount of dollars, thousands of dollars from a bank without, having a substantial plan behind that. So I was like, okay, cool. The current system that I have set up, the way I structure my business, is working without capital. So I kind of just kept going that way.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Working without capital. That sounds like an extremely risky venture.
Yeah. So how I structure my business is like, as far as like it's a low cost to upkeep.
How long does it take to make a watch?
The way I have it set up with my supplier now, it's like only like 5 to 7 days.
And you have employees, or you're doing the actual making of the watch yourself?
So what I do is the designing aspect of the watch, and then I outsource like the pieces and parts of the watch. And the mechanisms that I use is by Seikyo. They have what's called battery operated movements, and they also have automatic and mechanical movements. So those are pre-made. So I get all the pieces and parts, and then I have to put it together like Legos, basically.
Like Legos.
So they do the hard part. I do the the assembly part.
And how do you advertise?
Advertise
social media.
Yeah, social media, website, email marketing, pop-ups. Any way that I can.
So I can't walk into a watch store and ask for a Burnett watch.
So not yet as in like a watch store, but I do have 3 retailers out in the Washington area. One in Bainbridge Island, which is their museum. And there's also an art gallery called Art Noir in the heart of Seattle, and Bellevue Arts Museum, a little north of Seattle, well, east of Seattle.
So you find that even though you're here in Baton Rouge, you do better business in Washington State than in Baton Rouge or in Louisiana?
It's
and
about
maybe better is the wrong word, but you do substantial business in Washington State.
Yes. Yeah, I spent about recently I spent about 2 years out there, like promoting, doing like a lot of different pop-up shops, and like building my name out there, because of course I started in 2019 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and then promoting out here, doing pop-up shops, and marketing through Instagram, and building my business for about 3 years, and spent those 2 years in Seattle, pretty much copy and pasting the strategy that I did out here. And it did afford me the opportunity with a lot of different connections, as far as having events with Meta, with Microsoft, with and being on the showroom floor of Bainbridge Islands Museum, in Bellevue Art Museum, and being in the retailer of Art Noir. So there's just a lot of opportunities that I was able to get out there, but of course I wanted to also do those same things in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
So tell me about the wood. Is there one particular type of wood that is preferred over another? Do you use cherry wood? Do you use oak? Not that I'm an expert on wood, but I would imagine that you would have to be to know which woods work best with what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah, so there's different type of woods that are used. My favorite is ebony wood, because of course, like from a distance, it just seems like a regular watch, but once you get up close, you'll see like the undertones of like the brown and black wood. So ebony wood is my favorite to have on watches. There's different woods. There's bamboo. There's zebra wood. There's like different, a lot of different. There's rosewood. So there's different.
Is there
types,
a wood that you can't use to make a watch, or is it pretty much open to any kind of wood?
It's kind of open to any type. I haven't run into like, oh no, I can't use that one. Of course, it is subject to what I can get my hands on, but I never ran into like, okay, cool, this one is not something that we can't use. I did find out that I was allergic to one of the watches that I
really.
It's the one that has tiger wood, so I can't wear that one. But
LS, yeah.
Right. So that was a bummer. I was like, why is my wrist like breaking out all the time? So I just had to, I started testing other watches, and it's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna just wear this watch for a week and see what happens, and it cleared up. So I was like, yeah, I'm not putting that one back on.
So let's expand beyond just the watches, and let's talk about entrepreneurship. Again, you're a black man, you're 31 years old, and you're an entrepreneur here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If I were to ask you to describe the state of entrepreneurship for minorities here in Baton Rouge or in the Deep South, how would you describe it?
That's a great question. The state of entrepreneurship, I would say passionate and creative, because like I meet a lot of business owners, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs, I meet a lot of people that want to start businesses, and I see that the passion and creativity is there. Of course, like the flip side of that is like, the lack of resources here in Baton Rouge. But, the passion and the creativity is still there, and the willingness to start is still there. So
Do
that's
you
how I would
see
describe it.
race as an impediment to your entrepreneurship? Do you see youth as an impediment to your entrepreneurship? You're a black young man in the Deep South. And I say that, I'm from Baton Rouge. I'm born and raised right here in Baton Rouge. Lived here just about all my life. A few years in New Orleans, but for the most part, I'm right here. You're a black young man starting his own business, operating his own business. Do you see your youth or your race as an impediment to your entrepreneurship?
Actually, no, I don't at all. I actually see that as an advantage. When I was younger, using 25-year-old entrepreneur was something that people love to support. And adding that caveat of 25 black entrepreneur, that was something that, of course I didn't use it to a point where it was like, okay, cool, like that was like, me getting cool points. But I saw a lot of people support me because of that reason, because I was young and I was striving, and I was, a black man doing something that, hasn't been done on like at a large scale. Or so I look at it as an advantage in my opinion, because it did get me to where I am today. Because like now, I am 31, I am still young, but that's not something that I'm putting out there like, hey, I'm 31 and I own X, Y, and Z.
Gotta
they're
put
like,
it out there.
They're like, yeah, you should be owning something in your early 30s.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fabulous, especially since I know that, and they're very successful young people in this church and in this community, but most of them are not entrepreneurs. Most of them work for someone else. They work in somebody's office, or they work in the plant. Those who are kind of on their own are generally lawyers and perhaps doctors. But what you're describing is, to my way of thinking, unique. And I was just wondering if there were impediments based upon race or age, or sex, for that matter. I find that a lot of businesses, a lot of business programs are catered towards women and not necessarily toward men. Have you seen impediments where that's concerned?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that before, and I've also had, in my early stages of like trying to grow, I've had people come up to me and say like, hey, you have a great thing going. The only thing that you need to do is put a white face in front of it, and get them to push it, and then you will make millions. And that's something that that conversation made me uncomfortable, because it just made me think of like, all right, why can't my face, or why can't, a young black man's face, and not even to, make it all about myself. Why can't a young black man's face make millions with a luxury watch company? So yeah, I've definitely seen, the different, the gender or like the race play a factor, or, in how people perceive things. But, I powered through it because I'm able, like I said, I was born in Baton Rouge and raised in Seattle. So there's a lot of, diversity when it comes down to being from, being born in the South and raised in a city in the Pacific Northwest, to the point where like, I'm able to adapt in any like setting, in any room, to the point where like that's one of my strong suits. And so like I don't look at, like when I do walk into rooms, like, I'm looking, to, pull some, some knowledge out of the room, regardless of, the color or the gender or whatever is in front of me. Like, I'm able to have a conversation and, pull what I can or give what I can.
Are you able to get into some of those rooms that you want to get into so that you can have those conversations?
Yeah.
Good. Good. Are there others like you in the greater Baton Rouge area? Young black entrepreneurs? Is there a federation or a club or a group? Do you guys meet to discuss the pros and cons of entrepreneurship? This is something that I'm fascinated by, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So I am affiliated with an organization called Next Generation Pioneers. So that is like a power platform of black men that, pour into themselves and, then pour back out into the community. Because of course you can't help other people if you can't help yourself. So that is an organization that, that I love dearly because of course they, helped me throughout, my journey of entrepreneurship when it comes down to, starting my brand. So, I took a lot of, wisdom from them, advice from them to the point where like it, they afforded me the opportunity to, have businesses to this day.
And Next Generation Pioneers cover the gamut of products that they provide. I mean, you're a watchmaker. What other groups, what other types of services are offered by Next Generation Pioneer members?
But by the members, so there's like different types. So there's a guy, Chris McKinley. He has a luxury like planning event, luxury wedding planning event company. There's also landscaping companies. There's clothing companies. There are DJs within the organization. There's engineers. So it's not only just entrepreneurs. It's people in the city doing in the city of Baton Rouge doing great things. And
approximately how many are there?
About 20.
About 20 of you guys. You used the word luxury a couple of times to describe your timepieces. What's the price range of a Burnett watch? Low end, high end.
Okay. So
I could probably afford the low end, but but go right on.
So the price range, it ranges from $199 to $379.
Okay.
So prices are pretty affordable, and I say luxury watch company a lot, and a lot of people say, oh my God, I think their mindset is like always goes to like thousands, 1,500. And even when people see the watches, they're like, dang, I can't afford this. And then I tell them the price, and they're like, oh, let me get two of them. And in my opinion, luxury doesn't have to come with the price tag of thousands or, or whatever it may be. Like, because luxury is subjective to the eye. And luxury is simplicity to me. It's fine lines. It's making sure that everything that it makes sense. So it's like luxury for me is doesn't have to. It's not a price. It's not like a high end type of like, okay, cool, I'm going to charge somebody $2,000 just because. Yeah.
Do people make watches that do too much stuff? There are features on watches. This is my watch. Terrence, I don't know if you're gonna be able to get a picture of this or not.
Yeah, I believe they would call that a chronograph.
Okay, there it is. Okay, now they got a whole bunch of stuff on that watch. I don't have the slightest idea what it does. I know the date thing, and I'm looking at the date. It's wrong because you got to go through the process of setting. Do people expect too much of their timepieces?
No, I mean, so I see both sides of it. So like I have consumers that look at the watch, and of course they're like, okay, what is this? What is that? What is that? And and they use it to the full extent and make sure that it's fully functional and that they're using every part of it. Because like on that particular watch, it has like a stopwatch feature to the point where like you can kind of like press it and then you can time something. If you're like, oh, how long does this take? Boom, do it, and whatever. It has a date on there, and it has also the date, and it also has the Monday, Friday, the Monday to like the Monday through Sunday on there as well. So in my opinion, like, of course, me personally, I don't use all of those features on the watches that I have that have that, because of course it's like, all right, cool, that's another thing to keep up with. I put the time on there and I put the date on there, and we, you know, cool, and I go about my day.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and then there's, you know, some consumers, they're like, you know, they just wear watches just for fashion to the point where like they never even set the time.
That was going to be my next question. Are watches becoming more fashion statements than actual timepieces? Because if I want to know what time it is, I pick up my phone.
Yeah.
And my phone tells me what time it is. I like wearing a watch. I don't want to not have a watch. But I find that I use other things to tell time as opposed to the watch. Am I just weird, or is that a pervasive thing that's going on?
I hate to admit it, but there's times when people ask me the time and I go straight to my phone. So like you said, I do the same thing as you. But like I think last night somebody asked me what time it was. I pulled out my phone because it's just the ease of access, and my phone is always in my hand. So it's like I know for sure I can get straight to that, because sometimes like my watch is like the watches, like this particular watch that I have on is pretty light, so sometimes I forget that I have it on. So, you know, but of course, like I said, my phone is always there. So if somebody asks me for the time, please forgive me, because I'm going to look at it.
When you decided on watches as your business, did you have other accessories in mind as well? Bracelets, necklaces, chains, things of that sort? Or is it exclusively watches?
So when I first started, it was just watches. And I also did shirts. And the reason behind the shirts was a marketing strategy. Because watches was something that I felt, and I could be completely wrong, but my mindset at the time was, watches is going to be super hard for, you know, people to catch on to, because it is a unique thing, and I'm, you know, everybody else is doing like different businesses that are catching on, and I'm like, I have watches. Like, how can I get people into buying watches, or like, how can I market this? So in order to get the brand name out there, I started selling shirts first. So, you know, once people bought those shirts and they see it outside, they're like, what is our Burnett brand? What is Succeed Beyond Measure? What is this? And they look into it and they see, oh, watches. Oh, these are dope. So it got more people to look at it. So when I first started, it was watches and shirts as a marketing strategy.
Have you moved into the bracelets? I see you wearing a bracelet also. Is that your product?
Yes. So I did move further down the line. I tried Apple Watch bands for a while. That didn't really fit the brand, so I did away with those. But then I started to do bracelets to complement the watches. And that worked out pretty well.
Well, do you plan on, what's your 5-year goal? You've been in business now for 6 years.
Yes.
What's your 5-year goal? Where do you expect your business to be 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I want to be in more retail stores in, you know, the southern area. And also to open up, you know, a retail store for our Burnett brand itself. so that's where I want to be within the next 5 years, and that's what I'm striving towards currently.
Do you do theme type work with watches or bracelets? I mean, we're in the South. Football is a big deal down here, both Southern and LSU and the Saints. Do you do theme-like products?
Not at the moment, but that is something that that has been brought to my attention, because I do have like black and gold watches, and I do have like watches that kind of like can signify certain things. So, you know, I've had, you know, trusted people come to me and say like, hey, this can be, you know, this green and purple watch can be, you can market these for Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras, yeah. That was going to be the next question on my mind.
And then like the black and gold watches, you know, during the season, like, you know, put some Saints marketing together. You know, you'll sell a lot of those or whatever. So, you know, it's just something that, you know, that is being worked on. It's just something that's been, you know, on the back burner.
Did you go to school to learn how to? Are you a Southern grad? Are you an LSU grad? How did you come about learning how to make the watch? You say it's like putting Legos together.
Yeah.
Is it that simple?
Yeah. So I mean, oh no, it was definitely hard. I messed up so many different times.
That's what I
at
figured.
the beginning.
Yeah.
So it was more so being self-taught. And to answer the first question you asked, I didn't go to Southern LSU. I didn't go to college at all. After graduating high school, I kind of just went into like the workforce and, you know, and just avidly figured out how to get out of that never-ending cycle. So, but as far as how did I learn, it's more so self-taught. And like at first it was like a struggle, because like, you know, it like putting all these small pieces together isn't easy. But through time and repetition, it got easier. And it's like a link system, to the point where like, of course, everything goes in conjunction with each other. So like, you know, now it's a tedious process, but it's an easier process for me. So it's just a link system, placing things in the right order, and, you know, going from there.
You said you graduated from high school here in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, so I came, actually not in Baton Rouge, just on the outskirts of Baton Rouge at Livonia.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask if you were from Baton Rouge High. That's my alma mater.
Okay. I heard a lot of great things.
I was just curious. Are you married?
I am not.
Okay. So you don't have kids yet? I'm assuming.
No, I don't have any kids yet.
You don't necessarily go together, but I was just curious. Is this something that you want to pass on to your progeny, or is this something that is uniquely for you?
This is something that I do want to pass on. I created our Burnett brand with legacy in mind, and not just, you know,
it's your name.
Yeah, so I created it after myself, and I am a junior. So, you know, I want to have, you know, a son. I want to have, you know, the third, to, you know, pass this along, because of course, like within the 6 years of me owning this business, like I've got, you know, emails or DMs or texts from people that bought watches, you know, 2 years in, and they're like, you know, I love this. I want to, you know, buy another one for, you know, my son, or like, you know, I customized a watch recently for a young lady. She had a baby in December, so she wanted it engraved with, you know, the birth date, her baby's name and whatnot, to the point where like now, once that baby's old enough to see that watch, you know, that Burnett watch in the future, you know, that's something that she's going to look back and like, oh, it's going to repeat the cycle. She's probably going to want to get one engraved for herself. So it's creating that cycle, and like to the point where like, you know, I can't stop, and I won't stop. I don't want to stop. So it's like, you know, this is something that, you know, will be, you know, remembered for, you know, years and years down the line.
Do you have catalogs? Something that you could share with people that would help them decide what kind of watch they wanted.
Yes. So the watch selections is on visible on my website. So it has a catalog of men's watches, women's watches, and watches that are coming soon. And that is, available at burnettbrand.com.
If I wanted a specific kind of watch, could I sit with you and we go over exactly what kind of features I wanted in my watch and things of that sort?
Yeah.
And that way, it's already unique in that it's wood as opposed to metal, but the features themselves would be unique. Is that something that you offer also?
Yeah, that's something that I do offer. I'm thinking, I am in a process of like creating a system where kind of like, somebody can go online and like have like the variations of like customization options and stuff of that nature. Because it does have its restrictions and whatnot. But that is something that that can be done, and I've created multiple like custom watches throughout my years.
Look into that camera and tell our listeners and our viewers how they can get in touch with you and what they can expect from an R. Burnett experience.
Okay. Again, my name is Richard Burnett Jr., owner and founder of R. Burnett Brand, which is a luxury watch company. You can find me on all platforms, Richard Burnett Jr. And links to like my products and all the things that I have to offer will be on burnettbrand.com.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
I'd probably like to sit down and talk with you about some things in the future.
All right. Sounds great, man.
Okay.
Look
Thank
forward
you
to
for
it.
viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.